morning it is today. It's that first warm, almost spring morning. It's the day after Valentine's Day, so still mid-February here where we're at. But we're supposed to get up into the upper 50s today, I think. So I'm having my first breakfast in the garden. You watched me make my smoothie. I do that a few times a week. It's pretty easy. I do take the blend, I do blend it down in the basement. I have a sleeping teenager I don't want to wake up right now. Nice cup of tea. So I'll sit here. I'll enjoy the birds sounding a little bit more active than they have. And then I'm gonna get to some of the garden chores I can start to do right now. The big one, which I won't video, is I have to clean up the yard. The snow is finally all melting and the dog has been using the yard all winter long, and I haven't been able to do a cleanup from the dog. Geez, it's been so cold, probably sometime in mid-January. So that job will take me a little while, and then we'll just do a little tour of what the garden's looking like right now. It's in the season that kind of is like the ick season for me, where the snow melts, everything's all brown and kind of dried up, and I'm just anxious for spring. And behind you in my neighbor's yard, there's squirrels just leaping around between the trees. I don't know if they'll make their way through my yard while we're doing this, but who knows. So thank you for joining me for my first al fresco breakfast of 2026, and this is how I like to start my days in the garden. Nice and relaxed, little breakfast, nice cup of tea, and just some quiet time to start the day. All right, we're gonna start with the deck. I don't know about you, but my deck gets really messy in the winter. Everything just kind of gets thrown out here. So I didn't quite clean up all my pots from last year. I'm not even reasonably close to getting ready to do that. The soil is going to be frozen anyway. That won't happen for quite a while, but the patio cushions did get put away, which is great. Love this little table here. Found it at like a little thrift store. I don't know, I think I paid $10 for it, and it's sat out here for multiple winters, and it looks great. Little tile mosaic. Another little area, you saw where we had breakfast this morning. This planter, I had intended last year to try and experiment with using native plants in a container, and the season got away from me. So I just put, just some annuals from the big box stores in there, and then in the fall I threw some asters and marigolds and some ornamental kale and pansies, and you can still see the purple of some of them. They lasted pretty good. We had a really nasty cold spell here at the end of January, and that did them in. So let's head out to the yard. And this is my trusty companion in the garden, Earl. I don't know if I've introduced Earl yet. Earl's a brindled mountain cur mix. It was a rescue. We're not quite sure how old he is, but we've had him for about 13 years, so he's getting on, and he enjoys backyard time. So we get a real Christmas tree every year, and then I usually throw it out in the yard for winter cover for the birds. And I'll move that in the next couple weeks. I'll move it back towards the fire pit, and then I chop it up and use it to start little campfires in the backyard in the summer. I can't remember the name of the sculptor, but she's the same one that did the Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil statue, the bird girl. And I don't know, I found this online. I can't remember how long ago. I've had it at least 10 years, if not more. It's just a fun little piece in the garden. This area is pretty well shaded, and it faces north. I've got ferns in here, Jacob's ladder, and then I think there's some columbine in there, and then whatever other things kind of make their way in there, and I'll leave them. And then I've got a 9-bark shrub. Not sure if that was the best placement for it. I wanted something to kind of fill in this little area over here, give a little privacy to the deck. and it just is kind of crazy. So I'm going to trim it back this year, probably in a couple weeks before it really starts to bud out. And they usually grow back pretty good, even if you give them a hard prune. And I'll see if I want to keep it here or try to move it. This is I gotta be careful here because there's ice. The snow has melted and then refroze, so hang on to my 9 bark. I put this arbor up a couple years ago and I've planted the native clematis on it, and it did great. And unfortunately, I think it was a little top heavy, and we had some rough weather this winter, and it blew over. I don't even know. I think it was in December or early January, and I came out one day and it was down, and I was just like, okay, we're gonna wait. The ground is frozen and I can't really do much with it anyway. So this on the side of the house, towards the front yard, again, it faces north, and this is a maple leaf viburnum. This one's not doing so great. As I turn around and show you the rest of the yard, it used to get a lot more shade when we had some pine trees up, but it gets a lot of sun now and it's not liking it, so I may have to rethink that. We'll see how it comes back this year. But the next 2 shrubs over are the cranberry viburnum, the high bush cranberry viburnum, and they're doing great. And I did have to prune them back a couple times just to kind of get them into a better shape. And then in here there's ferns, wild geranium, some columbine, Solomon seal, and I'm rethinking it because it's just a hodgepodge and a little messy looking. So this is on my list of possible revamps, maybe in the fall. I don't think I have enough time to get this garden bed organized this spring and get things ordered for that. Or I've already started my seeds for the year for natives, and I don't have anything that would really fit in here. Alrighty, so there's our 9 bark again. There's Earl again. In this corner is a spice bush, and it does really well here. And all along this fence line, we used to have big giant white pines. Whoever owned the house before we had it planted them, unfortunately, under the power lines. Lots of issues, and it culminated one ice storm night where a chunk of the tree here, and this bird bath is sitting on the stump. It was a massive tree with a massive branch, and a big just good chunk of this tree ended up smashing into the deck and blocking our exit from the back of the house. So I had to, and there was one that was dying, one that was already dead, and the whole power line issue. So I went ahead and removed them. And then I want to take a minute to talk about this little bee house here. And a lot of people get these because they want to provide good shelter for a lot of our mining bees or native bees. And after I got this one, I did subsequently find out that they're probably not the best idea. But somebody had already, carefully step in the garden here, somebody had already made a home in here, and you can see how that one tube is all plugged up. So I'm leaving it over the winter. I'm gonna move it. Oh, I guess there's more than one plugged up. So we got, multiple little homes in here. And I just want to make sure everything in here has been allowed to complete its life cycle. And then I'm going to get rid of it and just try to use natural items like the hollow stems for my plants and that to provide shelter. When they get crowded like that in those close quarters, and if you don't clean them appropriately, they can spread disease, and I don't want to do that. So Earl loves garden walks. So you can see I don't do a big garden cleanup in the fall. I let everybody stay because there's so much life that nests or overwinters in the leaf litter or on the plants themselves. So this one right here are the stems of Joe Pye weed. So a little further down, just past this 9 bark, and then there's a spice bush kind of between, right in front of me here and that little bird feeder that you see on the fence down the way. I have a whole row of Joe Pye weed that gets really tall and beautiful, and this was a volunteer, so I left it. And then in the spring, when I start to see new green leaves growing at the base, I'll chop this down, but I'll leave several stems standing because, see if I can see, there's one here that might cooperate. They're kind of pithy. See if I can get that to focus. There we go. You can see how they're hollow there, and a lot of our native bees are super tiny, they're solitary, and they'll use those for nest cavities instead of those, you know, man-made little bee houses. This area, again, used to be full shade. Now it gets full sun, so I'm in the process of transforming it. This front area is a combination of I'm completely blanking. Celandine poppy. It's a yellow native poppy to our area. I also have later in the season purple prairie clover, butterfly milkweed. There's some native sedges under the leaves there. You can see a few of them. They're not doing great because, again, they're getting way too much sun, so we're going to transition those out. I'm not sure what I'm going to put in. And there's another 9-bark right there with the little bee decorations behind it. This one right here is buttonbush, and you can see if I can, there we go. That didn't work. There we go. So those are the spent flower heads, seed heads. They get these sort of spiky white flower balls. They like it wetter. I'm surprised they're doing well here. I just got them really cheap when they were little and popped them in, and they still seem to be doing great. So I'm just gonna leave them. You can see, unlike what I just told you, I did cut back some of that Joe Pye weed this year because I used it for another project that we're about to get to. But usually I just leave everything here. I blow the leaves from the oak tree into the garden beds. Now they're a little thick up here in front, so what I'll probably do as we get a little warmer is either use the rake or the leaf blower to fluff them up and scatter some more towards the back of the garden where there's a little bit more bare soil. So the project I was working on, you can see there's a rope, some cardboard, and some stones, is I wanted to extend the beds into the yard a little bit. You can see in the path there how much grass I covered up. I'm doing this in some stages. I want to eventually move the bed out further into the yard under the drip line as much as possible of this beautiful bur oak, and we'll then create a soft landing garden, and I'll do a video on what those are as we go through the spring. So basically all I did was kind of use the rope to outline and follow the natural curve that was already in the beds, but just extend it out a little bit. And I put cardboard down, got the cardboard wet, goes all the way around to this bed here. And then as the fall went on, every time I mowed or as the leaves started to fall, I would just pile things up on the cardboard. And then to keep it all in place so the winter winds didn't blow it all around, I used the stems from the Joe Pye weed, and they'll just stay here. As this thaws out and starts to get plantable, before I covered it, I harvested a bunch of seeds from the plants that are already here that are growing well, and I put them on top of the grass and put the cardboard on top, and I'm hoping that some of them will seed, self-seed a little bit and get going. Otherwise, I've started some seeds that I'm going to try and grow natives, and then I have a little bit of a budget for purchasing some things. And my hope is to get this to kind of extend out and fill in with things just naturally that are already in the garden. This is the back corner of the yard, and this is where I do a little fire in the summer sometimes, and the Christmas tree helps. And then I've got another little area I'm going to show you where I trimmed some branches off of one of our oak trees, and I'm going to let those dry out and use them for my Friday night campfires after work. I did add some native shrubs along the fence down this area to replace those white pines. So there's a couple here. I'll start with this one. It's a little tricky to see with the shadows, but this is a pagoda dogwood, or an alternate leaf dogwood. They have a real pretty shape as they get bigger. This one's doing really well right here. I'm excited to see if it flowers this year, but you can see, come on, focus, some of the buds. So that's fun. And then I've got, I always forget, and they're so small. Can't remember if this might be my viburnum or my serviceberry. And the buds Not quite swelling yet, but I think we're getting close. And there's another one tucked in over here with some bottle brush grass and some bee balm or monarda. And there's somebody else who I didn't plant here. I think this is a walnut. Holy cannoli. Look at that. So walnuts, oh my goodness, Earl. Walnuts have these very distinctive leaf scars. You can see it there. You almost see the bundle scars make it look like two eyes and a mouth. They sometimes call them a monkey face. And obviously a squirrel or somebody buried a walnut here. That's hilarious. The nearest walnut tree is about a block away. Well, it's too close to the fence, so I don't think I can keep him here, but I never noticed him last summer. Okay, so this might be the viburnum. Oh, I can't remember. I gotta look it up. But these buds, these terminal buds, are super diagnostic in helping you tell the difference. So this might be the viburnum and the other one's the serviceberry. And I think it's a black haw viburnum. I have to check my list. I know I'm terrible. I put so many plants in, I don't remember what they are. This is a fun little... I took that from one of my aunt's gardens after she passed away. She was a big gardener, a big influence on me. And I very rarely ever put any seed in there. Oops. But I'm sure things accumulate. But it does well. I always forget to take it in, but it hasn't cracked yet. It's terracotta. But I just love it. It's a nice little sunshiny, fun thing to have in the garden. Now the ground's still fairly frozen, so I'm not too worried about walking around in here. Mostly I'm just trying to avoid anything I missed when I was cleaning up for the dog. This little shepherd's hook, I usually hang a little lantern with it, and I can put a candle in there. It's kind of fun on my fire nights. Little thing to guide me back to the fire pit. These chairs are great, by the way. I'm not usually a huge fan of big plastic stuff, but they were reasonably inexpensive. They clean up very easy and they're surprisingly comfortable. One of my favorite spots to sit. Mid to late afternoon, it's shady back here and I can read a book. As the evening goes on, it does get a little mosquito-y, but I've got some new tactics I'm going to try this year that I will share with you. This is another one that I kind of cut down to use the stems to help hold leaves, but this is this clump here. There's another clump in the back corner and a third clump right over there. It's a little hard to see with my brush pile, but these are sweet black-eyed Susans, and I put them up front along my entryway sidewalk, and they got like 6 feet tall and really obnoxious and flopped over, so I cut them back and dug them out and just plopped them back here. And I thought, well, we don't get much sun when when the tree is in full leaf, but they've done really well, so I just leave them and get a nice little pop of color. Here's a spice bush. This one, holy cow, are the buds swelling on this one. But this is in a corner of the yard that gets the morning sunlight, and then with the oak tree not having any leaves on it, it's getting a good dose of sun. Temperatures have warmed up, so that's fun. And back here, this gangly, again, the buds are really starting to swell on these. That's fascinating. I don't know. I always lose track of where we're at. I suppose we are at mid to late mid-February at this point. This is maple leaf viburnum. I mentioned that I have one, over behind the 9-bark. This one gets a little more shade, so seems to be doing a little bit better. And there's some berries that are left over from last year. Birds haven't gotten to them yet. These have real pretty white flowers. I'm trying to contain it a little bit. It's a little gangly and leggy. I think because there might be just maybe the sun patterns, but I'll see maybe I'll trim it back a little bit, but the buds are swelling now, so I don't really want to cut it. I'll wait till next year. And then here I added a new tree, one of my absolute favorites. And it's a little tricky. And it's still very young, but this is a musclewood tree. And as they get older, they have a very smooth bark. And it would almost remind you of a beech tree. It's not a real flaky bark at all. And it starts to get this sinewy pattern. I'll pop in a picture of what they look like as an adult. And they're a native understory tree, so they do well under oaks. And I've got a bur oak, so I thought, oh, let's put the musclewood in here, kind of fill in the back area here. The other thing that's kind of cool, and I can't really, I don't have smell-o-vision, but we've had a family of foxes in the neighborhood the last couple years. And the fox, they leave a smell. They have like a musky smell that's sort of skunk, but lighter. And I've really been smelling it this morning, especially in that back corner. But we've also, the skunks have woken up, so I'm not sure if it's skunk or the foxes. I don't know if you can tell. Earl has a regular patrol route, so you can see, and you definitely see it when the plants start coming up. He's got a little trail that goes through and he compacts the soil, so it's a challenge for me to get things to grow across that back fence. Some things are doing well. I've put in things like interrupted fern and black cohosh. There's some more stems of the Joe Pye weed still hanging out, some bottle brush grass. But a couple years ago when we had the trees removed, I also had a new fence put in, and so Earl had to be tied up. He didn't have free range in the garden. And so for the spring, this garden area is at its peak in the spring. It looked absolutely gorgeous. So I was like, oh, this is what it looks like when the dog doesn't trample it. There's another spice bush over here in the corner. And in order for them, they're male and female plants, I believe. So I do have several, just hoping that they can get cross-pollinated to produce fruit. I saw a little bit of fruit on one of them this year. This is a bit of a mess back here. Holy cow, I haven't been back here in a while. Looks like some of the neighbors' trash is blown in. But those two tree stumps over there were hickories, and they died, but I left the stumps at that height, and then there's a little wood pile between them. We'll go around the other part of the garage to take a look at it. Perhaps not a full tour today, but this is a fun little secret woodland garden back here. And I get a lot of spring ephemerals. There's another maple leaf viburnum there. It's a little tricky to see. But those are the branches from the oak trees that I trimmed in January when it's really cold. You don't ever want to trim an oak tree when it's warm out because they can get diseases in there, so it's best to do it in the winter. So I need to break those branches down, and I usually stack them in the garage for the summer just to let them dry out a little bit, and then I can use them for firewood. And then down here at the base, I think this is marginal wood fern. I'd have to double check. But I love them because they will, except, even they were covered in snow for much of the winter, but they still have this beautiful green color. It's a nice little pop of green. And they stay green pretty much all winter long. All right. This garden along you can see this is where most of the snow is. And this is fairly shady, so anything that's in here is always delayed a little bit versus what's under the oak tree because it just doesn't get as much sun in the spring. But I have a lot of really cool stuff in here that does well. There's black cohosh back here. There's some Schwartz aster. That's the stuff blowing in the wind against the garage there. Some ferns. I think it's cinnamon fern or lady fern. I can't remember which one I have, but those stalks there are leftovers. I think these are the spore producing structures of the fern here. So that's how they reproduce. They don't make seeds like other plants. Let's see if we can zoom in there and get. So that's those ferns. I'm noticing I missed a few of Earl's gifts to the garden. Another, I can tell I love maple leaf viburnum. I really like it because it grows super well in shady areas, and so you can get some structure in like a shrubbery and that kind of thing. And that's some more black cohosh. These are the seed heads. I didn't really collect any seed from this one. Black cohosh is one of those that are a little tricky to grow from seed, so I just let them do their thing. The birds can eat them, or the seeds just self-spread and reproduce. This right here is the remains of blue stem goldenrod. You can see a little bit of how that growth pattern is. They get clusters of flowers all along the stems. They kind of arch. They have a purpley blue color with the yellow flowers, clusters of yellow. They're really, really pretty. You need a bit of imagination to to think of pretty in this garden right now. But it's all doing its job and providing habitat. I just put the toad house here for now to kind of mark out where the garden is, and it was holding the rope in place for me with the extension of the beds. I'll tuck it in. I tuck it into the bed itself a little bit in just a few weeks when all this melts a little bit. And I don't know if a toad's ever used it, but we do have toads in the yard, so that's always fun. I have a heated bird bath that I have to fill up without it being so cold. It evaporated, so I got to clean it out today and refill it. This is one of the compost bins that we have. It's like a cylinder with a little trap door at the bottom. And then I just can put things in. You see last year's pumpkin, some onions that went bad from last year, carrot peelings left over from Thanksgiving. And then when things thaw out, I will open that little trap door, and what I'll do is I'll shovel the stuff down at the bottom out if it's finished compost, and screen it and put it on the garden. Otherwise, I just kind of turn it by scooping it back up on top. Last year we had bumblebees make a nest right behind that little trap door, and I was not able to turn the compost bin. Oh yeah, it's frozen. I can't even get in there at all. So the compost bin needs a little work. Here's some leftover purple coneflowers, and leaving them standing, the birds will come in. It's natural bird food, so they peck away at it, goldfinches especially. I have a big stand of Joe Pye weed here that kind of, as it grows up, it does hide the compost bin. Some more sweet black-eyed Susans. They get very tall. I have to tie them up so they don't flop over. Again, you can see, I think I harvested some seed from here. This might have been my Monarda in those hollow stems. We'll leave standing. Some leftover bottle gentian, and they make these papery little capsules that are open on top, and they have just these tiny little seeds that look like little miniature fried eggs, and they'll scatter out. I don't think I can see any of them in the snow. This is blue lobelia from last year right here, and this is our pond, our little tiny pond that I dug out and put a liner in. And then I usually, as we get towards mid to late October, I drain the pond, clean it out, and I cover it with a tarp. This year I forgot. I usually put like a Rubbermaid bin inside to kind of pop up the tarp, and I forgot to do that. So now that tarp like sunk in and filled with rainwater and melting snow. And you can see footprints. The dog was standing on it earlier. He usually doesn't go anywhere near it because he doesn't like water. But in a few weeks, I'll have to get the pump out and pump out all the water from the tarp. And then usually by mid-May, I clean it out. Mid to late May, I'll clean it out. Because we're not going to, we could get a frost at that point, but we're not going to get a heavy freeze. And then I'll get the pump going. And I fill it with a lot of rocks and things so that there's varying depths. And then it's continually running. It's just a nice, pretty sound. And along this edge, there's irises that bloom, the blue flag iris. And it's cute. It's pretty. We have Culver's root that grows in here, lots of asters, more sweet black-eyed Susan. Again, you can tell where the sun doesn't get in the winter, but also we just dump all the snow through here as we shovel the driveway. These are New England asters, and one of the tricks I'll share with you as we get into May, as these start to grow back, is a way to kind of keep them more contained and fuller. You can see they're bushier. I get a lot more blooms and they don't just flop over into the walkway. Now at this point in the year, they do look a little floppy, but I also have some columbine tucked back in the corner there. As we come around here, this part of the yard maybe gets about 4 or 5 hours of sun a day, but I get some stuff that kind of surprisingly, purple coneflower will grow and bloom really nicely in here. So does the butterfly milkweed. Back in the corner here is the native hibiscus to our area, swamp rose mallow. I'll pop a picture of what that looks like when it's in bloom. I also have some more Joe Pye weed here, so I try to put tall stuff back towards the corner. Again, just a little screening and privacy for the deck. And we got some more purple coneflower in here with the little Mother Nature's bird feeder. This mess is a native Helianthus sunflower. I think it's Helianthus helianthoides. It's got a lot of common names, but this one will start blooming for me in usually in June, and it just keeps blooming right on through August, which is fantastic. I know this is probably horrifying to some people to see all this, but it really is really beneficial to lightning bugs and all kinds of other little critters that are so important in our gardens and in our ecosystem, and it cleans up fairly well once things start growing, and we'll do videos on how I go about that as well. This is more of that Monarda fistulosa, the bee balm. Again, I leave everything standing. And what's really neat is I've got a patch in the front yard too, but the patch over there will usually start blooming first. Then this one gets going, and then there are a few patches down that way in the garden bed, and because it's a little shadier there, they bloom a little bit later. And the last patch to bloom is over in this corner. I'm facing right now I'm facing kind of southeast-ish, and so just with the way the angles of the sun in the garage, it doesn't get a ton of sun. So what ends up happening is I get the Monarda fistulosa starting to bloom in early July, and I'll have it blooming well into September, which is a great resource for a lot of pollinators. So this little tour of the backyard. We'll pop out in front and do a little tour of the front, and then I think I'll get going with getting all the supplies out of the garage that I need to get my seed starting going. We'll see you in a bit. All right, we are on the other side of the fence now, and yes, you can tell it's spring. The leaf blowers are out. And I'm going along the driveway here, and now we're facing south. This part of the driveway faces south. The shade is here because there's a car parked right here, but I've got spiderwort. Penstemon digitalis is over here, the foxglove beard tongue, and then the whole row here along the house, if I can get backwards a little bit, is switchgrass. And I leave it standing all winter long, and then in a few weeks what I'll do is I'll tie up these bundles with twine, and then I have hedge trimmers, and I come in and just cut them at the bottom. And then I have these neat little bundles that I just toss in that back corner of the yard where the fire pit is. This here is the Baptisia australis, I think it is. It's the wild blue indigo. And you can see those hollow stems. And this one got cut. I can't remember why I cut this one in the fall, but I did. But I left the stems. But here's another bundle of it right here. This one I've had here for, oh gosh, going on 10 years now. Just banged into the other car. And I have a little support I use for it to keep it contained. And then I put my little red gardening glove on there to make sure nobody walked into it in the winter. All along the driveway, or the walkway to the front of the house is, sorry, my shadow's in the way, New Jersey tea. It's a native shrub. These are the leftover seed capsules, which are kind of fun. And they get all those capsules that you see were just clusters of little white flowers this spring, or in June. And the pollinators go crazy for it, and I'm really smelling that fox right now, which is crazy. And then in this corner, I need to do a little work on it. I don't know what happened here. I had orange coneflower, which is like a type of Rudbeckia. I think it's Rudbeckia fulgida or something. Fulgida. And I don't know, they kind of petered out on me. You can see a couple of them still here, but this whole area was filled with them, and they don't get very tall, and it's just this profusion, this mass of, you know, black-eyed Susan looking plants. Yes, the shovels stay out well until the end of April, because we can't get snow here until the end of April. This garden bed, again, this front area here had more of that orange coneflower, And then I used to have a clump of the bee balm back there, and some that died back. I don't know if it got crowded out by the Rudbeckia. But when I harvested seed this year, I just took everything, all the leftovers, and dumped them here, hoping that there were still some seeds left that maybe I'll get a new clump growing. This is a hydrangea. It's not native. I think it's a cultivar of a native. I go back and forth about keeping it or removing it, but for now it's fine. It's got real puffy little white flowers. It doesn't seem to be invasive anywhere, and pollinators do use it. And in another week or two, I'll come in and trim this back. I always trim it back every spring or late winter, so you can see where the cuts I've made before. And I'll do a little video about how I do that, and it just keeps it from getting too out of control. I like to be able to see out the window, so I don't want it to get too tall. But we leave everything standing. This garden bed here was a big project for me last year. It was one of my issues I had, which is I had like one of everything, and it just looked really awful, and it was hard to keep maintained. So I cleared it all out last year, and I tried matrix planting. Again, I'll do a video in more detail on that, but so basically you see I put in clumps of prairie drop seed and planted them fairly close to each other so that when they're in full growth, they're gonna shade the soil a bit. But in between them, I popped butterfly milkweed, silky aster. I'm completely blanking on the third. I tried to pop something in that was going to be blooming in the spring, something in the summer, and something in the fall. And again, some more of my neighbor's trash seems to have blown over here. But it really worked well, and I got the idea because of this patch here. This was put in when I put the garden bed in a while ago, just clumps of prairie drop seed, and that's all that's in there. And this little clump in front, over the years we've done a couple of things here. Butterfly milkweed does okay, but this past year I added a bunch of prairie smoke, and you can see the green leaves there of prairie smoke. It's got kind of ferny looking leaves, and I'll show you what the blooms look like in a few weeks. You can see some leftover butterfly milkweed seed pods here. And then that's the view to the backyard. And there's another clump of the wild blue indigo here. When those pine trees came down, they were well above the power lines when they came down, so they cast a lot of shade. And when the pine trees came down, this area got way more sun, and this just exploded in growth. It's fantastic. When the snow melts, you have to do the cleanup. This garden bed in the middle here is a few years old at this point. So I'm trying to reduce the amount of lawn I have here. So I started by, I had that redbud tree planted there. It's getting pretty big, and I just extended the bed around it. There's some sedges. This is the wild mint, the mountain mint. The seed heads there, some butterfly milkweed at this end. These are the seed capsules of some of the penstemons. You can see they have these little beaks that as they dry up, they open up, and then it's holding the seeds in there. At this point, I'm not sure there's any seeds. Oh, I guess there are. I should come out here and harvest these. And I'll be able to grow some penstemon. And then I get, again, you could start to see some green growth. Those are the penstemon leaves. And then in here are also Midland shooting star and wild hyacinth. Those are the first things. So as we go along, I'll cut out these stalks, and that'll give room for the other spring things to kind of poke up in between. And I'll compost it or put it in the back corner. I don't know if I can get it on there or not. I'm gonna try. There's a little spider. There he is. Look at that. February, and we have a spider. So that's the middle of the yard garden. And then the drainage ditch, instead of trying to mow when it's filled with water, we replaced it. And there's water-loving plants in here like turtle head. That's the seed head from turtle head. There's cardinal flower, blue flag iris, swamp milkweed, some asters from a little farther down the drainage ditch have started coming in. I do have brown fox sedge. I'm not crazy about how that comes in. I might do something with that this year. And some seed heads again from the asters. There's blazing star down in this little chunk underneath the tree. It's a little tricky to see here, but you'll see clumps of brown. That's all Pennsylvania sedge. There's some more gentian, the bottle gentian in here. You can see the seed pods from the bottle gentian. Some more, get out of the shadow there, some more prairie smoke. There's a few random daffodil bulbs that still come up in there, so we do that. There are all the garden beds for the vegetables, and we'll do a little tour of that so you can see how that changes as the growing season goes on. So this area here where these 3 circular beds are used to be native plant bed, but I was just having a heck of a time with a really invasive, I don't know if it was the Japanese stilt grass. It was just some kind of nasty invasive grass that kept getting in there and I couldn't keep it out, so I just tried to kill it and smother it, and then I'm like, I might as well just, this is my sunniest spot in the yard, so add a few more beds. Last year I did potatoes and then lettuce in them, and they did really well. And then this bed here was an addition last year as well. Again, this whole area used to be native plants, but it was tricky to keep them growing without weeds. And so we wanted a little more area for growing veg, and we added these. And this one last year I did my tomatoes. So this is, I believe it's 4 feet by 8 feet. And I'll share my garden vegetable plan with you in another video of how I plan out the vegetable garden every year. I do crop rotation, so I won't put tomatoes or any like potatoes or peppers or anything like that in this bed. Anything in that nightshade family. I think this year it's going to be onions and carrots. And then those beds, I can't remember what I'm doing. Those might be the peppers. Maybe not, because I did potatoes there last year. I'll have to look at the list. But I have little pockets of natives that did well and keep coming back up. So this is the Monarda fistulosa again, the bee balm. Love this one. You can hopefully, it won't focus in. When you look at the seed head, you see the tubular nature of, there you go. All of those individual little tubes were one flower clustered together on this flower head. So when insects or hummingbirds visit, there's all those little nectar sources tucked in there. And then when they get pollinated, they all produce seeds. So you get a lot of seeds, a lot of flowers in there. This is another bed. I think I did, what did I do in there last year? I see some parsley leaves, but I think I chucked those from the herb bed. I'll do that too as I put the garden to bed. Like this was a last little batch of lettuce last year, and it kept going almost like to Thanksgiving. And then right after Thanksgiving, we got dumped on by snow and then really cold, and it all just died. But I just left it there to kind of, and I'll just turn it under in the spring and it'll naturally break down and feed the soil. This one was carrots. This was cabbage last year, just to keep the butterfly or the cabbage moths from laying their eggs on there. So I did really well there. This is our herb garden. That's the parsley from last year. Look at that. You can still see it's still a few little parsleys hung on. That's wild. In the middle here, you can start to see some of the chives are starting to come up. See a little bit of green. And we have thyme and rosemary. I don't think, and then lavender. I don't think my thyme and rosemary would have made it this past year. Some years they do, but we just had such a bad cold spell that I don't think they're going to do well. This is my winter sowing. So I put a bunch of I drilled a bunch of holes. You can see the holes there on top. The holes on the bottom, filled it with potting mix or seed starting mix, and then put my seeds, my native seeds in there. And then it'll allow water to drain, it'll allow rainwater to come in. I don't think anybody is going to be sprouting yet, but I'll at least show you what it looks like inside. I do have a little map and I've labeled it. I put it in sections, and each section is a different species. And these are for plants that need to be cold stratified. They need to experience winter. So I put them outside. And I did this very early in January. So like here, right along the thing, I wrote the word front and I did it on the side as well. So hopefully I'll be able to figure out what's growing. This last year was zucchini and green onions later, after the zucchini came out. This was broccoli and then a thing of carrots. I succession plant my carrots, so I always have some carrots that are ready to pull and eat. This was green beans last year. And what I do when I clean up the garden is just I cut the stem here, but I leave the roots in the ground because beans will fix nitrogen out of the atmosphere. I don't know if we'll be able to tell. The ground's kind of frozen. Now they broke off, but sometimes you can pull them up and the roots are attached and they have these little balls, these little nodules on them, and that's that nitrogen fixation happening. This was onions and carrots possibly. I can't remember. And this is a little bit smaller of a bed. This one's only about 6 feet long. And I think I did green beans in this one as well. Yeah, I did green beans in this one as well. And then the bench might need to be refinished again this year. Some more purple coneflower for the birds to eat the seeds. My little bur oak tree. I did trim some branches that were kind of coming down and hanging over the driveway. And my, you know, on cars, new cars have those alerts like you're getting too close to something. All these bells and whistles would go off every time I tried to pull out of the driveway. I usually back in, so when I would pull out, it would be telling me there was something in the way. But I had a delivery truck come to and nearly take out the whole tree because of it. So just trying to keep sight lines and all that other good stuff. So that's a tour of what the garden looks like now. I know this is false spring these next few days in our 50s and 60-degree temperatures, but I'll take it. And it's fun to see the garden starting to wake up a little bit. The snow's all melting off. And we'll see each week how it goes.